Hello, everybody. Here we are. It is Friday afternoon. I'm going to say that with a quizzical look on my face because it's been quite a 2 weeks. And I'm not quite sure what day it is. I would say I don't know where I am, but I know where I am. I'm in my office. But we're joined by Ben Sach, who is in a
Oh,
cozy cocoon.
cozy cocoon in Froome.
Cozy cocoon in Fruma. There's a
Easy for
song.
you to say.
Yeah, it's easy. There's a song title there somewhere. So it's brilliant to have you all here with us. Ben and I are going to be talking about a topic which is actually very important. Um, and given the state of the job market at the moment, given how hard it is for people to find jobs and maybe even to keep jobs, with news of all the layoffs at various organisations, when Ben and I were discussing what topic can we really bring to the community and engage people with to try and help people out, it was about not being a nice to have as an agile coach. So Ben and
And
I have
yeah,
got a lot of experience in this field. We've recruited agile coaches and we have been agile coaches for many, many years. And today we are addressing the topic, avoid being a nice to have, and how to really show your value as an agile coach. Ben, should we start with some introductions and you can explain a little bit about yourself and then we'll take it up from there.
yeah, absolutely. So, hello, I'm Ben Sach. Anyone who doesn't know me, I've been lots of different things. I've been a software developer. I've been a business analyst. I've done leadership roles. I've done consulting. I've done perm. I've done waterfall, say it quietly. I've done obviously a lot of agile recently. And yeah, in my last few years, I've been sort of agile coaching, everything from team to program to sort of head of agile at Sainsbury's. So I've sort of seen it at all levels. And I think this is one of the things that's really come out recently is around that as a discipline, how do we really demonstrate the importance of agile and do that in a way that people can really grasp and show the impact that we're having, so that in these sort of slightly leaner times, we're not sort of under pressure as a discipline, as sort of an easy to cut, nice to have, and also that we build that support. So yeah, so that's the background I'm coming from.
And for me,
Yeah.
I've been very similar to Ben in some respects. I've been a developer. I've been a BA. I really enjoyed making databases and normalization, which, funny enough, was a conversation I had with Dan North yesterday about the joy of normalization. And it's not very often you get to have those conversations. I spent my career as a teammate, moving into being a fake product owner, scrum master, and agile coach. I spent many, many years working in horrifically large organizations and ended up as a senior director at Deutsche Bank, looking after the design and implementation of an operating model based upon large-scale Scrum. And then all that got too much for me. My mental health was suffering. And then for the last 4 years, I've been working on my own business, Sheev, who helps us bring this live stream to life today. Also, the host of the Product Agility podcast. I would say maybe at the point where I'm maybe starting up too many businesses on the side. But the one thing I know is that my experience as an agile coach, my experience in hiring agile coaches has told me that great agile coaches have a supreme impact on individuals, and when the stars align, have a massive impact on organizations. And I think there is a lot that we can share from our experiences which will help with that. Now, today, we're looking to have a conversation with the people who are with us on LinkedIn and YouTube. So please do add comments, add questions. Let us know you're there. Say hi. If you want to shout out, let us know. We can oblige. Because we want to make sure that we're giving you the most useful information. We've got some questions which we have provided ourselves, which we're going to structure this talk around. We're going to be using a fantastic tool called Aha Slides to get a word cloud on the go and to get some more ideas from you all, which we'll kind of bring in later on. The one thing I don't want this live stream to be is full of platitudes and the common things that people say. I've got little time when people say, what's the value of an agile coach? And it doesn't result in anything concrete. Or it's just some arrogance-driven kind of mock humility type question. Answers such as, well, who doesn't benefit from a servant leader? Or surely, just challenging ideas and challenging the status quo is enough. Sadly, it isn't. Sadly, most of the time, just being nice and challenging and being a servant leader isn't going to give you the value that you need right now to stay employed in this competitive job it, in my opinion. So I want to get to the real stuff. We want to give you some real tips and advice. So Ben.
And I don't think it's just for us as individuals. I think it's also for us as a community, for a group, for a discipline. We need to be showing our benefit in a really sort of practical way. Otherwise, I think we're gonna struggle as a discipline. So I think both as individuals and as a discipline, I think this is something we need to face into as a group.
Okay.
I also want to apologise that there is just one light above me, and I'm aware that my head is quite shiny, even more than normal. So apologies for that in advance for anyone who is just staring at my very shiny head. I'm afraid you're going to have that for the next 55 minutes.
Well, no,
apologies. That's all I can do.
There's worse things. So we want to start with a bit of a question, and I'm going to put a link in the comments so you can have a look on there. And what we would love to begin to understand is when you think of return on investment for an agile coach, right, what is it that springs to mind? Like really, when you think of, it's a term that's bounded around every now and again. And when you think about about return on investment for an agile coach, what is it that springs to mind? We can see there's a few people joining, which is great to see. Nothing worse than a blank screen. Ben, this is a question I know which you're quite keen about. Do you want to give a bit more background as to the question?
Yeah, so I think this is a real crux of understanding the sort of problem. So I think we need to make sure that what we understand as ROI is the same as what a company understands and what your leader understands. So I think this is something that's really important to consider. I'm interested in people's views, so I'm going to try not to. I'm sort of stalling a bit to try and give people a chance to think about what it means to them, as Ben said. But for me, I think this is very much around actually how do we bring benefit to the company that or organization that they recognize. So not that we recognize sort of all these, sort of maybe helping an individual team or helping a person or, sort of improving processes, but actually how does that return for the organization? How is the organization better, able to make more money, able to drive the impact that's looking to have? So for me, this return on investment can and often is connected to something monetary, but actually it's anything that is important to the organization. So what are the things? If you look at an organization's values and at their mission, but actually more how they measure themselves, that's what I consider the ROI, is how do we connect to that, to what the company considers important, to show that we are directly driving the factors and the measures that they need to drive. So that for me is return on investment. I know traditionally it is a monetary based term, and it can relate to that, absolutely, and often does. But for me, it can be slightly broader as well. But it's something that is important to the business, as opposed to something that's sort of local and is a nice thing to do that we think might lead into something else. It is something that is genuinely connected to what the business is looking to achieve.
In fact, that's a really important point. Is that there are leading and lagging indicators as to what return on investment is. And there's always going to be a mixture of those. There's a lady named Tara Wellington who I interviewed in the podcast a couple of weeks back. And she's all about storytelling as a product manager. And she says that actually when it comes to storytelling, it's something she does every day. But there's no point telling a story unless it's linking back to the business objectives. So at some level here, when we're talking about return on investment as an agile coach, the question we should be challenging ourselves with is how does this correlate to what's the causation between what I'm doing and the business objective? It's in the same way that when I applied to be a professional Scrum trainer at scrum.org and I had to share my experience, the one biggest piece of feedback that came back was, how do you tie what you did with the value that the business was trying to achieve? And it's creating that linkage. Now we have a wonderful amount of responses. Ben, can you see what's up on the screen there? Are you
no.
Well, what I'll do to make life easy, let's share the screen for a second here.
Cool.
So there we go. So when we think of ROI as an agile coach, what springs to mind? We've got many things here: reduce delays, happier teams, decrease failures, encourage experimentation. Ben, which of these really sticks out to you as being good examples?
I think these are all really good examples of those leading type measures. So these are all things to me that are going to help most organizations. I think the thing with all of these is that they, as a leader in an organization, if I'm, let's go to the top, if I'm CEO and I'm looking at this and going, cool, okay, we've got, sort of happier teams. That sounds good. That sounds great. But actually, if I'm under pressure from a money perspective, I'll probably be going, okay, I can live without happier teams. It's nice, but I can live without happier teams. Are they delivering? So it's how you make that connection between sort of happier teams and actually this is what's important to the organization, delivering this particular program of work. They're really looking to get across the line, improving the relationship they have with their customers, greater sort of profit this year or greater revenue. How does that happier teams thing connect through? And we'll talk a little bit later about how those things connect. But I think for me, a lot of these are really good leading measures, but it's also thinking about how do they connect up to the company, the key company drivers. Faster time to market is an example of something that could easily be a company strategy. So it may be that actually the organization you're working with, one of their key drivers, one of the things they're looking to achieve strategically over the next few years is to be faster to market because they think they're suffering against their competitors. So in that situation, absolutely, that is a lagging indicator, an end in itself. So if you can say, actually, by doing this coaching, I can directly show you how we're getting a faster time to market, then awesome. You can take that to the board, that can go up the tree as much as you like, and that will be powerful at all levels because it fits into the company goal. I think the thing with the other ones is they are powerful and they are impactful, but it's making sure that they are right for the organization and that they do connect to those strategic goals so that people in anywhere in the organization can make sense of what team maturity means in terms of the organization as a whole.
So if I take what you said there, Ben, and I was making some notes down here, is that I think like big tip number one is really understand who's judging your performance. Who is it and how are they going to measure your performance? Now, from a professional coaching perspective, if we ignore agile coaching, then actually that performance calculation, that value conversation is actually quite easy between two individuals because that individual simply won't continue the coaching relationship with you if you're not providing value to them. In an agile coaching context, it's much more complicated. So first and foremost, really know the who is judging you and what does value mean to them. Secondly, and this relates to, Ben, what you were saying, but also a great comment we've had in LinkedIn from Parimala. And Parimala says, has the Agile coach contributed towards solving the problem statement? Right, for the org, the reason the org hired them in the first instance. And I think this is the second thing, which I think is massively important and a great tip, is really understand where is that business going right now and what are they trying to achieve? And how does that group you're working within like contribute towards that bigger purpose? Because at some level, the board, the senior people, the people who are controlling the budgets, they will be making decisions based upon their attainment of that particular goal. And as an agile coach, we need to understand how do we contribute towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is often subtle. So this is the other thing is you will quite often be given, this is why agile coaching is here and this is what we want you to do. But actually, it's important to really dig underneath that and understand the why, because all of us as human beings, and me and Ben, both as ex-business analysts, both know this well. Quite often when you speak to someone and they also say, we want this, and then you'll dig into it and you'll realize that actually that isn't what they want. There's something else connected to that or something else underpinning that really matters. Or there's something the person isn't willing to say because they don't feel it's right for the company, but actually it's really important to them as an individual. So digging in and analyzing the people who are key in your world and who are going to be making those decisions and understanding what is genuinely important to them, their careers, their day-to-day working. and being able to fix those things while tying them in with the business need, that's a really powerful combination. But it isn't usually obvious. It's usually pretty subtle what people really actually want.
So I wonder, Ben, if you find yourself in a situation, you are a new agile coach, what particular tool or technique would you say is useful then in this situation for trying to understand the purpose of the organization, how you contribute towards it, everything you've just said? Like how can people do that?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things you can do to really work this through. So tools wise, I mean, one of the key things is understanding who those key people are, and the classic 4 square 2x2 grid stakeholder management chart is really useful for this. If you don't know it, look it up, and I'm sure we can dig it out and put it in the chat afterwards. But this basically splits people into how much influence they have and how much they care about what you do. And so people who really care about what you do and have a lot of influence, those are the people you really want to think about. So the first thing is to identify those people. Who are the people who really care about what you're doing and have a lot of influence over you? And then then you can start to understand their world. Then you can start to get into what drives them. And quite often people sort of lean towards sort of data. So a lot of people are data driven. So, they want to see numbers. So try to understand, are they someone who numbers are important to? And when you chat to someone, you can usually pick that out. But the questions they're asking, are they asking you to sort of prove things? Are they asking you about numbers? Are they asking you to show them data and bring them data? Or they may be someone who is a people person, in which case you're probably going to get more from them by putting them in touch with people who you're impacting. So if they're talking, they use the word feel a lot. If they're talking about people, they're talking about the impact you're having, the impact they're having on people, then getting them in touch with the kind of people you're impacting and you're having a coaching impact on will really resonate with them, because they'll really feel that that people connection. Similarly, some people are process driven, so just really want to see, this is the thing that's changed. This is how the team works differently, and this is how things flow differently. So being able to take them through that is really useful. And then some people really react to stories. I mean, Ben's already mentioned stories. Most human beings react really well to stories, but some people really, really sort of double down and love stories. So in that case, you really want to take them something that has a bit of a flow to it, usually that has some kind of challenge. They're interested in what the challenge was, how you got there. So those people will love the story of, actually, this was the challenge we were facing. This is how we did it. It was difficult because of this, but we got through it in this way. And these people in the team were the heroes. And, that kind of just bringing it to life in that way really, resonates with some people. But other people will go, why are you telling me this? And you can tell it pretty quickly. If you're watching someone, you can see them going, why are you telling me this? All I want to know is what the process looks like now. What changed? Give me the detail, or give me the data, or connect me with that person whose story this is related to. So one of the things, so first up for me is understanding who are those people, who are those key stakeholders that are going to have a massive influence on what I do and who really care about it. And then really understanding what kind of person are they? What do they want? How do they want this information to be framed? And give it to them in the way that resonates with them, in the way they can understand it, in the way they can appreciate it and take it on. But you can go beyond that as well and really then start to think about, how do they connect to the leaders around them? What do they need to be successful? We all want to be successful. We all like people around us who make us successful. So if you can work out what things will help them to be successful, then you can also start to sort of build those in as well and give them the data or the stories or whatever it is for them to be able to sort of share that with their leaders. So just asking sort of questions to them around, sort of, what challenges are you facing? Even just really sort of blunt, how can I help you to explain what we're doing together to your leadership? Those sort of conversations and those sort of questions can really help you to help them to make the case for Agile coaching. Because if they can't make the case for it, they may be the biggest fans in the world, but if they're If their manager holds the purse strings, it's not necessarily up to them. So it's understanding, where that person, that group is that you need to have on side, and then being able to understand how to resonate with them and how to influence and help them to understand the impact you're having. I do think there are some tools as well, and Ben, I know you use system modeling a lot. That's something that's really powerful for understanding the impact you have and how it can connect to these broader challenges. Because quite often you'll look at the things you're doing, the work you're doing, you'll say, okay, this is making the team happier, this is making the team more mature. I feel like that's helping the organization to be more successful, but I can't quite connect those two together. And by laying that out on paper and laying that out in a sort of a very visual way to show how the different parts connect to one another, and the impact of the work you're doing on those other elements, it really helps you to be able to get it right in your head, to be able to explain, and even to be able to put in front of other people and say, look, if we help the team to be happier, that means you're recruiting less. That means you're saving money here. That means you're not upskilling people and bringing new people into the team. That means that you're delivering more. And being able to make those connections to things that really matter will help you to show your value in a very tangible way. And the other thing I was just going to say was, we've sort of focused a bit on this is about sort of supporting the discipline and making sure that we're not a nice to have and we don't just get cut, when things are tough. But it also works in terms of getting momentum. When I first came into to Agile Coaching, I was really happy when someone took on stuff that I'd been sort of nudging and pushing as their idea. That was great. I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve. I didn't really care that they knew it was me or didn't know it was me. That was fine, because they thought it was their right. They felt it was their idea and they owned it. They would push it and drive it. But actually, one of the things I learned was that you do have to have some. You do have to get across the impact and the effect that you are having as a coach, because it gives you momentum and it gives you the ability to build and to action things more quickly. If people look at you and go, well, I don't really know what he's done or she's done, then it's harder to do the next thing. If someone looks at you and goes, that team did some great things, and I know the coach was heavily involved in that, then the next thing you're trying to do and support and drive is so much easier, because you have that momentum, you have that credibility. So this is really useful for building that credibility and be able to make that next step, and make the best of the changes you've already made, because change is hard. So having your stakeholders, having them on your side, being able to communicate them in the way that works for them, helping them to be able to give the messages they need to their leaders, and potentially those holding the money's purse strings, and also impacting their career, they will help you to both protect the Agile coaching role, but also to be able to have more momentum and do more. So that was a bit quick scattergun. I'll talk about lean value trees a bit in a minute as well, I think. But Ben, did you want to talk about system modeling? Because I've talked a lot there.
Yeah, well, I'd like to weave together what you were saying and go from a systemic perspective, because I think there's a really important thread going through that. Because what we're talking about now is, when you're going into a new organization or you're in an existing organization, like, what can you do to effectively increase your credibility? What can you do to tell a story which shows that you are invaluable? And some of that is the story that you tell. And it reminded me of something I learned very early on in my career. And I'm not proud that this was the case, but I learned very early on that it isn't what you do that counts. It's what people think you do. And sadly, often that's what the decisions come down to. And you can have like you're saying, a very good sponsor who is saying you're doing a fantastic job. But if their boss thinks you're useless, and just sees what you're doing and just sees that and hears that story and makes their own narrative for what they're observing, then you're going to find it tough to be able to kind of stand up to that. Now, how do we combat that? Well, Ben, what you were saying about systems modeling, and this is something which we teach as an optional module on our Agile coaching course, our IC Agile team coaching course, is that systems modeling helps you learn more about the system. And I think that one of the best ways to be credible and one of the best ways to understand, like, what you're doing having an effect towards the organizational goal, is to learn more about the system. And what do I mean when I say that, right? Because that is a big fluffy term and it may be very soundbitey, but what does it mean in reality? What it means is understand or learn, because I don't think you can understand, but learn more about the potential cause and effect between the people, between decisions that you're having, between the fact that people are saying the team's going slow and the goal that the organization is trying to achieve. Now, what's the systemic link between the fact that there seems to be lots of defects in the last release and the fact that in the last release, during the last release, as a coach, you did a retrospective every week, and that didn't stop it, or maybe it did. It's learning more about that, because the more you learn, the more you can talk to your sponsors, the more you can talk to your champions, the more you can get people hearing your story and showing curiosity and inquiring about their version of the story. The more you learn, the more you're able to tie what you're doing into the kind of things that they want to do, or the more at least you give yourself that decision. And then the more likely it is that you're going to be contributing towards the things that make a difference to them. Now, with that bigger understanding, that absolutely comes down, Ben, and this is, I was making some notes as you were talking there, is that there's an element here about not wanting or feeling the need to be the most intelligent person in the room. Like, if you want to demonstrate your value as an agile coach, sometimes it may be given that tidbit, given that lovely piece of information, which helps people along the way. Other times, it's leaning heavily on coaching skills and letting teams come to their own decisions, own their own decisions, succeed or fail, but then if they fail, they learn and they get back up and they try it again. And when I think of the agile coaches that used to work for me, or I think of the agile coaches that I've admired, like the ones that we hear good things about, is when the teams are saying they're doing a good job. It's when their managers or their sponsors are saying they're doing a good job. It's not when they are going around saying what a good job they did. Sure, you're telling the story and you're making sure that's coming through and you're making it clear that you're relating what you do to the business outcomes. That comes through when other people are saying what a great job you've done. So part of the next big tip for me around how to demonstrate your value as an agile coach is to get out of your own way. Focus on those coaching skills, build the people around you. They're smart people. Let them tell the world how good you are rather than you having to do it all the time.
And I think that's really important. And one of the things here is that there are people who can sort of create the impression of doing very well despite not doing very well. And I think we've all seen that. It's not something I've ever been able to do. I don't have the skill in that, and it's not something I'd want other people to do. I think all of this works if it's built on a strong foundation. So you do need, like Ben says, that strong foundation of genuinely doing a good job. I think what's painful is when you genuinely do a good job and it's not noticed, not appreciated, it's not connected to the impact that it has. And so I think that it's still extremely important to do a great job, to genuinely be doing a great job. That is the basis. All of this builds on the top of that. You can't have one without the other.
So there's a question from Chris Charlambus, which says, what tips have you got to tell your own story effectively? For me, if you're telling a story, your own story, it's not making yourself the main character. You are not the main character in the story. It has to be somebody else. And I think that Ben, and I'll throw this over to you in a sec to get some of your tips, that actually something you were saying earlier reminded me of actually user research. Is that when you're conducting user research, you do it in quite a specific way. You're not leading people in any way. You're not saying, do you like my solution? Will you buy my solution? You're trying to understand how people feel, what the challenges are for them, what are their goals, what are they trying to achieve. Really what we're talking about is how are we building empathy? And empathy mapping, really understanding your managers, the people around you, is an incredible way to then better tell that story, because then you can weave the story, you can meet their needs because you understand them better. So when I was talking, I mentioned this lady named Tara Wellington. As a plug, there's an episode coming out of her on the Jersey podcast next week. What she was saying is that she has a story which she's telling about the product, and there is a character in that that isn't her, and that character, they're looking to change the way that character is behaving and what they're doing, and equating that to the business value at every stage. But does she tell the story in exactly the same way to everyone? Well, no, because they're different audiences, and she'll labor different points, and she'll structure the story differently. So when she's telling it to the development team, it's different than when she's telling it to the senior stakeholders. So if you're trying to tell the story of a journey that you're taking a team, 2 teams, 3 teams on, right, those teams are the characters. How do you relate what the teams are doing and the things they're trying to the business outcomes? And how do you then evolve that story so that when you're telling it to the team, it motivates them, it gives them purpose, it pulls them forward? When you're telling it to the senior people in the organization, it's a much shorter story. And it's tying in the benefit of what the team is doing to the business outcomes, and then less about the whole kind of generating motivation and purpose, because what you want the senior people to do is ask questions and get involved in that. And that's where understanding, building empathy for those senior people helps you tell that story. Ben, what tips have you got?
I think you have to make it. I agree with everything you said there, Ben. And I think one of the things to build on that is you have to make it authentic to yourself. So one of the things I noticed when I moved into leadership teams was you are surrounded by people who are very good at telling stories about what they've done and what they've achieved. And I've always struggled with it. I find it really uncomfortable, and I'm not good at that. And so I remember my boss talking to me about that and saying, look, you need to find ways to bring these things to life for people, because everyone else is doing it. You need to be able to bring this to life for everyone. And the way I actually found to do that most effectively was to get feedback from the people and the teams I was working with, just to ask them to regularly, every couple of months or so, looked for sort of feedback, qualitative and quantitative. So a number of, how are you finding, where you are in terms of your ways of working and how you're finding working with us, but also some sort of a bit more touchy-feely, like what are the stories you can tell about how we work together. And so that was my way of telling a story through someone else, was to actually just cheat and get them to tell the story. And it's a big ask of people. So I think you always have to be really respectful when you're asked for that, and sort of say, look, this is massive for me. This is really important. And I'm not very good at telling my story. Could you help me tell the story that of the impact we've had on you and your team? And as long as you've had a good impact, most people are willing to do that. And I think that, like you said, is really powerful. We're going to say, look, there's this thing. It's not come from me, but it's about the impact that our coaching team has had. It's about the coaching impact that I've had, and I'm sort of happy to share it because it's someone else's story. And so that made me a lot more comfortable, because I found it. I'm just not very comfortable talking stories about me. So that was my cheat way around it.
Nice. Great tip. Storytelling is an art, and it has many different forms. And they've all got generally a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the important thing is that it's a story that people want to hear. And I think understanding your audience, if I'm making up a story for my kids, if I make it as surreal and as abstract as possible, they're going to love it. If I did the same to my wife, she would think that I've lost the plot again. So, you got to know your audience. Now, I wanted to share this on my screen a second before we move on to the next kind of chunk of this, Ben, which is next chunk being like challenges of demonstrating ROI, some of the things that get in the way, and some tips and tools around that. What I wanted to share, though, with people was just a little something from our team coaching course. And for those of you that have been on the course, who are on the call with this, my team, this will definitely be familiar to you. So this is one of the Miro boards we use for our course. And if I just scroll down here, there's this fabulous approach called Stokers. Now you can Google this. Stokers 3D coaching is what it's known as. And if you consider this for how you're engaging, first of all, and you really want to show your value, because this structure, it may seem over the top, but if you really want to set yourself up for success, then I can really recommend kind of following a process such as this. So What I would say is when you're engaging with a new team or you're engaging with an organization, and let's say you hopefully know some kind of time frame you're going to be engaging with that team. Or even if you don't, you can say, I want to give myself 3 months. Now, given we've got 3 months to work together, what do we need to focus on? And then once you've got some ideas from people, and maybe they haven't got ideas, great. Well, that's a teaching opportunity. That's an opportunity for you to say, okay, well, how do we find out what the focus needs to be? What are people complaining about? What are people finding challenges with at the moment? Right. And just explore it, build empathy, be really curious. I mean, given when you've got that understanding, remember saying, well, what would you like to be different by the end of that 3 months? So sure, we know we want to focus, but what do you want to be different? And again, if they don't know this, that's another coaching opportunity. And what we're trying to do is really get into the minds of the people we're going to be working with, the minds of the people that are going to be saying yes or no to our continued engagement. Now, the next one, no, this one's fabulous. Like I'm a huge fan of the structure, because now what we're going to ask is, how will you know that you've got what you need out of this time? Because you're flipping it. Sure, we know want to be different, but how will you know? How will you know as a client? How will you know as a team that you're going to have what you need out of this time together? Then we move on to role, which is where we ask, well, how are we going to start this? Like, you're not going in with no context, not really understanding the situation, trying to determine a way of approaching things which isn't based upon any understanding of the context. What we're saying is we respect you, you're an expert, we want to meet you where you are, so how are we going to start this? And then asking the question, where shall we start? Now, I love this because it shifts the power of giving the information and also of articulating what your engagement needs to be onto the people that you're with. It shows a huge amount of curiosity and I believe a huge amount of compassion and caring to actually ask people these questions, to be genuinely interested and concerned about how you help them achieve this. And so this structure, I find, is an incredibly strong way to start with a new team or a new organization. And if you structure your questions around this, it means you've actually got something you can say, look, I am performing in relation to this, and maybe something changes, and then we can recontract. We can say, am I being useful? Where are we now? What do you know now that you didn't know before? And whilst all of these are fantastic for an agile team coach, they're also really fantastic just for your own one-on-one coaching practice as well. So I can highly recommend this, Stoker's 3D coaching. If you Google it, you'll find this. You'll also find it on our agile team coaching course.
And I think I was just going to say, just to build on that sort of is really powerful to go through. But one of the problems I have is I'm someone who is always looking for the next thing. What's the next challenge? What's the next thing I can take on? And by the time I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to talk about the last few months and what we've achieved and being able to sort of explain that story effectively, I've forgotten a lot of the detail. And the detail is what really matters quite often. And those challenges, because once you're over the challenges, you kind of forget what the challenges were. It's very easy to just go, okay, well, they're done. So I kind of, you put them to one side. So actually just keeping a bit of a log, and it doesn't have to be much, but just as you move through that sort of Stoker's world, having put that sort of initial Stoker's piece in place, as you move towards the outcome, what's happening each week? What's happening each time you meet? What are the challenges you're going through to make sure that you don't lose those along the way? And just keeping a bit of a log of those is really powerful. And then you can build those into something I'm sure lots of people have heard about, the hero's journey. So this is something that's really, really interesting, really fun to have a look through. It's famously the sort of step-by-step approach that was used in Star Wars to tell the story, but it's a stereotypical sort of journey that heroes in novels, plays, films, poems go on, sort of step by step, right back to sort of ancient Greek, sort of Jason the Argonauts, those sort of tales all follow this structure, and they all have the challenge in there. You don't want to skip over the challenge. The challenge is what makes the story interesting. So make sure you're including, when you tell the story, think about the Stokers, think about where you were starting from, where you were looking to get to, and then the challenges in the middle. They give you that hero's journey of the team or the organization or the program or whatever entity it is which the story is about. Those challenges give you that story to then get to that outcome that people can really resonate with And if you haven't looked up, you haven't come across Hero's Journey, just look it up. There's tons of stuff online.
So much.
There's tons of nice visualizations. It's quite funny because once you know it, you just constantly see it in every film, every book, everywhere. But it is really good. A simplified version of it is really good for telling that story. And Stoker's really helps to sort of put a structure around that in a really effective way.
It kind of gives you a lot of the raw material you need. And I love that, Ben. I'd never really considered that before. But like, you want to build that story, that contracting, that recontracting, gives you the story points. And so if it does come to the point where you are in a situation where you do have to kind of fight for your position, maybe you do end up becoming the main character, and maybe that is your hero's journey. Now, Thomas Cassar said, what happens if it just gets returned with silence? So you're going through Stoker's, you're contracting, and you're trying to understand all of this, and all you're getting back is silence. Ben, you can go first with this one because this is because this is one of my favorite questions.
Yeah, this is a tough question.
But I love it. I love it when that happens. I love it when that happens. But I'm just me. All right, go on, Ben. You go first.
See, I'm someone who generally tries to use silence as something to bring out, sort of others to talk. So the first thing is don't just start jabbering. So whether this is like silence from you're sat in a meeting talking to someone about this and you're getting silence back, or because you're you're emailing things out and you're saying this and you're saying and you're not getting anything back. Yeah, either way, don't just like try to give more and more and more and just because that just ends up as a mess. So just try and reflect and be very sort of targeted in how you respond to that. But the key thing is that's telling you you're not hitting whatever it is that is important to them. And I've absolutely been in this situation, and sometimes I've managed to find what it is that's important to that person, and we've connected, and then we've built from there. And sometime over a beer later on, they've usually gone, I thought you were a complete waste of space at the start. But actually, when you did this thing, that was important to me. And, we've built from there and we sort of work together effectively. And sometimes I haven't been able to work out what is that thing that is important to them, that I can give them to help them. That means that they care about what I do. And they're not just going, okay, I just don't want to spend my time on you. Fine, do your agile coaching thing, just do it away from me, because that will end badly in the end. So you do have to try and find a way around that. And I think speaking to people around them, trying to understand what their challenges are, because quite often it's because they're dealing with fires all the time, and you're nice to have. You're trying to do this nice stuff with the team, but it's not a fire. It's not going to get them shouted out or fired tomorrow if they don't deal with you. So finding out what their fires are, working out how you can help them with that, and earning credibility by helping them to deal with their fires. That's the way I always approach that situation with silence. But it's really hard, and you kind of need some people around them, or find some people around them who will talk to you, because otherwise you're just guessing and just throwing things at them.
What if, Ben? What if you understand what someone's fires are, and you're looking at it and you're saying, do you know what? It is totally within my my wheelhouse, as Tara would say, but also as my dear and very, very old friend, because he's old, Mark would say, it's in your wheelhouse. But that isn't the wheelhouse that you're currently willing to kind of operate within, right? So perhaps it's some heavy stakeholder management, project management type work, which you can absolutely help out with. But you're like, that's not really kind of Scrum Mastery, Agile Coach type work, but I think I could add value here. How would you approach that situation?
So I think it's massively dependent on a number of things. So firstly is, what are you willing to do? So do you want to be involved in that stuff is the first thing. Because if you don't want to be involved in that stuff, then be careful about getting involved in that stuff, because you will be involved in that stuff for the rest of your life in that organization. Because once you're known as being effective in that space, people will lean on you to do that stuff. So make sure that you want to do that stuff. And if you are, then it is around just trying to pick up a few small little things and say, oh, let me take this off you. Let me just take this off you. I will do that. And once you fix a couple of small things, they'll come to you with more, and then you can support with more. If it's something you don't want to sort of step into, you want to stay in a separate role, you really have to think about how can you support others who are facing into that from your role. So if it is heavy stakeholder management, how can you coach someone around that space to help themselves? Or how can you suggest changes in process to support that? Or, what other things could you do to support that? And then the third thing is, if you're looking at it and going, this is, what I'm here for and what's important to me is important, but it's not going to cut through the fire. The fire needs to happen first. Then you can either sit that out and just try and be helpful on the side and hope that works itself through with any support you can give, and then you get to do the stuff that you love and that you want to take forward with the organization. Or you can just say, look, this isn't the moment for me. You're not going to get your money's worth out of me now, so let me go and do something different. Once these fires have gone, bring me back and I will be able to have these impacts. And that's, I have done that a couple of times, and it's a really difficult thing to do, either internally where you say, look, I know we're supposed to be working with this team, or I'm supposed to be supporting you as a senior leader to do this, but right now you need to deal with this other thing. I'm here to help you if you need me to help you with that, but I don't think I massively can. So I think I can have an impact over here. Let me go and get on over here and have an impact where I can and where there's a need right now. And then in 3 months' time, let's check back in and see where you are and see if I can help you with that next stage. So it is really around looking at the situation, looking at yourself, looking at what you want and what you can do, and then making a best decision out of that. And the decision to walk away if that's the right one, and then come back at the right moment.
This question is getting some attention, by the way. This little bit here. So it's thank you for your answer, Ben. Let's spend a bit more time on this, because I think a couple of things spring to mind. Number one is from what you're saying, Ben, is know your boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. Know your boundaries. I think the topic of this live stream is showing your value. I think the flip side of that is knowing your value. So don't feel like you should help out in areas where you don't have the skills. Know your value, know what you're good at, but also know your growth, and know if it is something that perhaps you want to try this time, but and you want to try to see how it feels. So maybe I would say don't always discount it, but there is that big risk, which it means you get stuck in that space after helping. Right, so when you start helping that way, like I say, you get very known for that, and then you're stuck there. And Laura, someone I've met a few times. Hello, Laura. It says, what if you've helped out, but now you're stuck in that space? What can you do to almost rebirth your role? And I find that a fascinating concept. Is that how can we recreate ourselves when we are then labeled with something? We're labeled with something which perhaps we don't feel like it fits for us. So I would say, I'll put one out there to say that as an agile coach in these situations, and in most situations, it's very challenging. So do seek a coach yourself, or learn the professional coaching skills you need to coach yourself to help you through these moments, because they will often arise. And Ben, when you've been in these situations, do you ever feel like you've had to kind of, I use the term rebirth, but start again and reimagine yourself? And how do you take people on that journey then to show that whilst you were valuable doing that thing, that isn't where you want to go? Like, how can you kind of transition yourself out of one place into that valuable agile coach space?
So there's only one way I've found to do this, and that is to find someone better than you at doing the other thing. So me and Ben are both, we've worked in lots of different fields, lots of different disciplines. I've ended up sort of doing sort of delivery management type work, having never had that title, and dropped into product stuff. I've done all kinds of things, and then had to step away from them. And by far the most powerful thing is if you can have someone strong in there, that means that you can easily, if someone comes to you, just go, oh, okay, well, that's fine. It's just this person's dealing with now, and hand it over to them. And that person does a great job for them, and then they've forgotten all about you. And so that for me is the only way to do it. I think if there's no one else filling that role, or no one else strong filling that role, people will always come back to you. And it's nearly impossible to break that without leaving and then coming back later on, or moving into a very separate part of an organization or something. So yeah, that's not the easiest answer, but the one that I've found is just find someone strong who wants to do that, who's really good, and just give it to them instead. And people will start seeing them as the go-to person, which is good for them because they want to do it, and good for you because you don't. So it's wins all round.
You remind me of a few things, Ben. My friend Saloni reminded me last week, actually, just at some point recently, she reminded me that when we were working in the Royal Bank of Scotland, and even when we're working together at Deutsche Bank in these types of roles, our number one thing with certain people was to make them look shit hot. Like, what can we do to make you look shit hot? And when we face pushback from certain people in certain areas, and we would say to them, honestly, look, well, I'm not here to take your job. I'm not here to get in the way, right? I'm here to I'm genuinely motivated to make things better. And I want to make you look shit hot. So can I work with you to help you look great? Right. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. If it didn't work, then we moved on. Now, why do I say that? Well, yeah, you were saying about finding somebody better to do the role. And maybe that's an opportunity for them to look great. And that's an opportunity I didn't realize before. But Ben, what I'm also, if I kind of scratch the surface just a little bit, I think in larger organizations, you have to be a reasonably skilled operator to be able to execute upon what you said. So how much do you feel there are some of the what's the word I'm looking for? Not niche skills, but some of those less favorable skills of managing the corporate environment and dealing with politics to enable those types of things. Like how important are those then to an agile coach in order for you to show your value?
Yeah, I mean, that's super important, both in terms of, so if we start with this very specific topic we've just been talked about, if someone sees you as being able to do a role, then they won't be in any rush to bring in someone else to fill that role. So you need to make sure that you're creating momentum and drive for them to do that. So that is all about knowing the people, the politics, being able to sort of drive people, and being honest with people, so that, I'm not going to stick around and do this job, but I will help you to bring in someone who will, kind of conversations, building those relationships, to be able to have those conversations with the right people. So that relationship building is super important. And again, goes back to that stakeholder map of understanding who are the key people, the key few people I really want to speak to, every week, and really think about how I communicate with them, because they're the people who will help you to do those things. More generally, absolutely. And so I've been working since I left the head of Agile Coaching role at Sainsbury's a year ago, almost exactly now. I've been working in my own micro consultancy, and I think the thing I've learned there, which I would take back into if I was going to talk to my old self, in head of Agile Coaching role, would be around, be aware of, just people you need to build relationships with, and people you need to sort of be aware of what you're doing. I'm a bubble person. When I land, I'm quite good at landing in organizations, because I go in and I go, okay, this is the most important thing. I'm just going to focus on this. I don't care about anything outside the bubble. This is the thing I need to do. Get it done. Start making progress. Build momentum. Show tangible impact. I'm quite good at that. And then I try and build my bubble out. But the bubble never really gets as big as it should unless I really actively go, okay, who are the stakeholders I need to have, sort of understanding what I'm doing to both support me to do more, and also to support me when things are under pressure. And that's the thing, probably my biggest learning, I think, from the last year of working for myself. And if I was going back into my old role, like I say, that's the thing I would really actively do, is that sort of stakeholder management, keeping connected to those individuals.
I would plus 100 that. I mean, I say that's because I was really crap at it. I think I was too easy to dismiss certain people, and I think that's the one thing I would take into my. Well, I do factor it in now a lot. Is I actually get joy from making connections, and I've upped my coaching skills, And I think, and I not think, I do enjoy listening to people now more than I ever have done. And I think that I wish that I had done that more when I was in agile coaching positions, because I think I would have been seen as more favorable and more valuable if I had found ways to, dare I say it, make people like me a bit more and show that I was a human, to let the good stuff I was doing come through. Because I think sometimes that's blocked by the fact that people think you're a bit of a waste of space, or you're challenging the things that don't need to be challenged, or you're asking their world to change. It doesn't need to change, because sometimes I think as an agile coach, you end up being uh, the physical manifestation of all the things that people dislike about the change or dislike about
Yes.
agile, and then you get a lot of flack for that. Now, I need to find out this person's name, because this tool is so Alison says, do you find it difficult to draw the line between being a coach and a therapist? We'll make this our last little exploration. And I think that there is a very distinct line between coaching and therapy. And what we're not looking to do through coaching, generally speaking, is diagnose and then kind of prescribe some kind of intervention. And I think that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just to listen. And going back to Tom's question, when there is silence, sit in the silence sometimes. I think that is hugely important. And if I think about how my engagements have changed and what actually I get the most value from personally right now, it's the 1 hour conversations I have with certain product leaders, where my job with them is to listen. And the honest truth is, sometimes I am just honest and I'm courageous and I tell the truth. And what's fascinating is that lands so well. And sometimes I think that it's hard to feel credible, and it's hard to challenge people as an agile coach in certain ways so that it's actually good, it lands. And I find a healthy dose of real intense listening and playing back and asking questions, Ben, like I've been doing with you, that kind of almost interview style questioning, showing you're really listening and you really want to learn more, earns you a huge amount of credibility. So when you do come up and you say, you said this and you said this, or you said that, and actually I don't think that's quite right, then people are willing to listen to you because you've invested in listening to them. Ben, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I almost, and actually anyone, I think there's some people here from my old team will probably agree. My risk was always more on the other side, was between coach and doer. I naturally want to get in and get my hands dirty and solve problems. I love solving problems. That's something I love doing. So when someone comes to me with a problem, I want to try and solve it. And the thing I've had to learn over the last few years is to manage that. So, and I have seen how powerful that is when you don't just go and solve someone's problem for them. For one, because usually when I've actually shut up and got out of their way and let them work it through themselves, they come up with a solution that I've gone, actually, that is much better than what I had in my head, because I don't know what you're doing. I don't know your environment you're in half as well as you do. And guess what? You're just as intelligent as me anyway. And so that's what I found really powerful. So that's more the problem I have. I think there is a little bit of, therapy in the softer sense, in terms of people just talking, in terms of to work through things themselves. I think as long as you don't engage with it and have an opinion, some people just work through things and they need to work through that to get to an answer. And that's part of coaching, I think. It's just to let people work those things through. But yeah, not taking them back over the things in the past and sort of making them explore anything in the past and avoiding all those kind of things that we're not skilled in. I think it's just being very aware of, this is outside of something that I am skilled in, and being honest with people and saying, look, you need to go and talk to someone who is skilled in this. This is a problem I am not skilled in dealing with. And I think it's hard because it's human things, and working out where something stops being them just talking about something coachy and they actually need some genuine help from someone who knows what they're talking about in terms of therapy, and that isn't me, and being really honest with them and helping them to find that person.
Which is an absolute must, if we're going to be ethical coaches. To know our boundaries again, and know when and how to get people the help they need. Now we are pretty much at time. That was an extraordinarily quick hour. It's a joke that we run on the courses, is that we have these fake timers that actually that always seem to go much quicker than real timers. But no, we have actually run out of time, I believe, unless I've had a brain fart and we've Still got half an hour to go. But we've covered a lot of topics. Ben, thank you so much for being here on this Sheave live stream. And thank you for everyone that's come along and asked such awesome questions. There is a link to one of our Agile Team Coaching course, so I say Agile Certified Agile Team Coaching course, and a 30% off code. The November course is pretty much sold out. There's a couple of spaces left, but there are some dates in there for next year. On that course, you'll get to experience myself and Ben Sage, and perhaps even the one and only John Spruce will be there as well. I'm glad, Ben, you thought it was a power hour. Love a power hour. If you have any thoughts, any more questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. We will get round to them because this event will be up here ad infinitum. So if you ever want to recommend it to someone or come back and review it, you can just go back to the event page and you can see this video. We are looking forward to welcoming you back next month, where me and Steph Ashmore will be delivering a session called Training from the Back of the Zoom. See what we did there, training from the back of the Zoom. We are going to be looking forward to seeing you on LinkedIn. As I said, if you want some more tips on storytelling, do check out the Productivity podcast next Wednesday, because we have a lady named Tara Wellington, who is a Reforge executive partner, so an extremely, extremely experienced product manager. And that's about it. Ben, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, what would be your closing words?
Oh, closing words, high pressure. So I think it's understanding the environment you're in. There's no absolutes in this. You need to understand what the organization you're in is looking to achieve. You need to understand who your key stakeholders are, and they might not be obvious, and you need to understand what they're looking to achieve. If you can do that analysis and understand that, then actually the easier bit is understanding how you then achieve that. But that analysis is really the key.
Beautiful. Ben, thank you so much. Enjoy your holiday.
I'm off to Centre Parks very shortly. Out of my cocoon, off to Centre Parks.
And thank you again, everyone. You've all been awesome. So many people came along. So many people asked questions. It's been phenomenal. And we look forward to welcoming you back next month for Training from the Back of the Zoom. Do make sure you follow us on LinkedIn so that you are notified as to when it will happen. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely weekend.